right, guys, welcome back to Downtown Rams. As always, I'm your host, Alexis Kraft, joined here with my co-host, Jake Ellenbogen, and we are coming to you with a recap of the Rams' win on Sunday, 26-9 against the Arizona Cardinals. Jake, this was, and I feel like we've said this a lot when it comes to the Rams this season, it was a tale of two halves, truly. The first and the second half felt like two completely different Rams teams, but we were able to come out with a win, looked really good in the second half. Run game off the charts, 158 yards rushing from Kyren Williams, Cooper Kupp touchdown, just really great game. It was really fun to watch in the second half. Jake, looking at this game from your perspective, you and I both talked about how this was a must-win game for the Rams, and this was kind of a get-right game. Obviously, the first half didn't go our way, but then they came out and corrected these things in the second half. What stood out to you as being the most important factor in this Rams win against Arizona?
Yeah, I thought the most important factor was, when we've talked about it off air, Alexis, this team, when they get down going into the half, how does Sean McVay respond? And normally it's not well. Normally it's abandoning the run. Well, I got to give hats off to Sean McVay because that was the exact opposite of what the Rams came out with in the second half. You talk about 7 straight runs with Kyren Williams. Williams had almost all of his 158 yards in the second half. Which is crazy when you think about it. And I think, obviously we don't want to talk too much about the injury. We'll get to that later. But taking that aside, I think the Rams really found their starting running back over the last few weeks, but it was really evident in this game that not only does this guy have what it takes to be on the field down in and down out because of just the little things he does, whether it's pass protection or just, his knowledge in the receiving game, or just his ability in the run game, but just the consistency factor. And I saw some more explosion in this game than I've ever seen from Kyren personally. I think one thing I want to point out, 5 carries for over 70 yards when running towards Kevin Dotson. I think that was an adjustment made by McVay. Before this game, Kevin Dotson only had 1 carry, 40 yards when Kyren Williams was running at him. So he's been playing now, starting 3 games. And so they finally were like, you know what, they saw the tape. They saw the way Dotson was playing. Let's run more towards him. And I thought Kyren reaped the rewards, but can't stress enough, offensive line blocked well, but can't stress enough that Kyren Williams was creating yards that weren't there, yards after contact, making guys miss, setting up his blocks. You can say it until you're blue in the face. Offensive line matters. You got to have a run block, to be able to actually run in this league. But you also have to be able to know how to set up your blocks. And that's something I think Kyren Williams does well. And I don't think he's got enough credit for it. And, a thing that has been constantly used in the fantasy football community against this guy was that, he's got an elite role and he's not an elite talent. And furthermore, his yards over expected, he's always at the bottom of the league. Well, guess where he was this week, Alexis? He was number 1. So yards over expected is when basically it's a metric where it decides, next gen stats, they have all the chips and all the shoulder pads and stuff. And they decide, could this guy have gotten more yards? Did he fail or did he succeed and go above and beyond? And so basically what they're saying is when he ends up finishing first in that metric this week, he went above and beyond. It's why he led the entire slate in rushing yards, more than Mostert, more than the return of Saquon Barkley, more than Derrick Henry, more than Christian McCaffrey. I mean, the list goes on because it was more than everybody this past Sunday.
Yeah, and let's start with talking about the run game, both the game and sadly the injury that both of our running backs now have. But looking at this game, it was almost like in the first half, barely ran the ball, right? We were all kind of back to the old complaining on Twitter. Everybody, why aren't we running the ball? Why aren't we running the ball? We were struggling against a bad team in the Arizona Cardinals, right? It was just felt so obvious. We come out in the second half. I mean, Kyren puts up 150 plus yards in the second half. That is crazy. And not only did he put up those yards, they were good runs. He was making more yards than he was given by the defense. He is hard to bring down. Talk about yards after contact, 3, 4, 5 guys to take him down. He had that really good touchdown where he stiffed armed like 3 guys. And you could tell that he was ready for that because he didn't look happy in the first half. He's not really the kind of guy, I don't think, to be openly complaining, but there were some camera shots of him after he got a couple runs in the first half where he was visibly didn't really look that happy that he was coming out. He didn't say anything, but he was kind of like, why are you not using me? Then he comes out in the second half, they do use him, and look what happens. He puts up 150 yards on the ground and gets a touchdown. And like I said, he is very good at finding the hole. He's explosive. He's hard to bring down. And he's so fun to watch, I just think. And I know everybody thinks that I'm a biased Kyren fan, but if you have eyes, what I'm saying isn't wrong. If you've been watching him this season, nothing that I've said about him is not true. He has done everything the Rams have wanted and more. So I do think a lot of people are finally starting to wake up on Kyren Williams. I know you've said that he's a top 10 running back in this league.
Yes.
You made a good video on him that's on your YouTube that I watched where you bring that
Appreciate
up. So if you guys haven't watched that, go check it out. But I mean, the stats don't lie. Eye test doesn't lie. The dude's a baller. Sadly, however, he does have an ankle injury that we should touch on, Jake, because he got an MRI. He revealed an ankle sprain that he, I think, played through it. I think he ended up, it looked like he tweaked his ankle maybe in the third quarter, early fourth quarter. He stayed in, kept playing, got the touchdown, still did very well. But obviously, when you get out of the game, the adrenaline's gone. You notice the swelling. That's when clearly it wasn't good. So he does have an ankle sprain. He's going to be out at least this next week. Ronnie Rivers, our backup running back, has an MCL sprain, right? Or the PCL.
PCL. It's a grade 3, so it's going to be an IR stint for him.
So Ronnie Rivers out for a while. So we now are down our running back 1 and our running back 2. Jake, looking at these injuries to Kyren and Ronnie, what does this mean? And then I'll also let you touch on some new additions to the running back room that I know you're excited about.
Yes. Well, it means that Zach Evans and Royce Freeman are the next men up, according to the pecking order, but not so fast because the Rams did go out and bring back former Ram, Darrell Henderson, who started a few years for them, has had success in this Sean McVay offense. And furthermore, they also brought in a guy who has had some success in this league as a pass catcher, somebody that I think is a better pass catcher, scat back than a pure runner in Myles Gaskin, who was working with Kevin O'Connell over with the Vikings. And the interesting thing there is that I think the familiarity factor is really going to allow these guys to not only play on Sunday, but I think they have a chance to play more than a Royce Freeman and a Zach Evans. And I think that honestly might make the most sense. I think when you look at these runners, Zach Evans, he's the explosive guy. He's the guy who has the chance to have a really big game if things do work out for him. He's got really high upside. The problem is he's got a low floor right now. He's not necessarily ready to take the brunt of the workload, and he's not great in pass protection. He's limited in the receiving game, and he has ball security issues. He also lost his starting job twice in college, 2 different schools. So that's something to keep in mind. With Royce Freeman, you get what you pay for. He's a 3.7 yards per carry running back who's good in the short yardage gains. You're talking about you need a 1 yard, 3rd and 1, or a goal line situation. He can help you in that. He's solid in pass protection. He offers a little bit in the receiving game, not a ton, and he's good on special teams. Now you insert Darrell Henderson, who can really do it all. And the big reason why they let him go last year was obviously because of Cam Akers, but it was also because Kyren Williams was essentially everything that Darrell Henderson was, and Henderson was on a contract year. Cam was not. So that's a big thing that I don't know if I leave that out a lot or if that kind of gets lost in translation. But when Kyren got healthy, it's not a surprise that right when Kyren got healthy and Cam was, being Cam, we'll say, Darrell Henderson was out the door. So the question for a lot of people that they asked me is like, why did Darrell Henderson not get signed? Well, what we're seeing now, Julio Jones got signed today. Leonard Fournette is working out with teams. This is the week 7 period, week 8, week 9, where you start to see these injuries pile up. And now these guys are going to get signed. If you sign one of these guys to a deal and they're on the team for a day and you cut them the next day, you now owe their entire contract for the season. So it's made it a lot harder, even though the NFLPA means well, it's actually hurt veterans because now it's like, do I want to sign Darrell Henderson, pay him, which by the way, his vet minimum is way more than a rookie, right? So do I want to pay Darrell Henderson, say $2 million to come on my team? And if he gets hurt in day 2, I now owe him all of that money. Or do I want to go out and get a UDFA who I can sign for $600K or whatever, and I don't have to pay a ton? And that's what a lot of teams did. And especially when you look at this running back class, it's one of the better running back classes in recent memory, Alexis. I mean, it was really stacked from top to bottom. So when you think about that, that's why guys like this are still available. And the Rams, you're not going to go out there and you're not going to sign anybody unless to play, unless you know that they can. And that's why I felt like it was a no-brainer, because it's not just because I've pounded the stump for Darrell Henderson for years, but it's also Darrell Henderson has familiarity. The only other guy that would have made sense was Cam Akers. He's on the Vikings. You're not going to trade for him back, right? The only other guy that would make sense besides that is anybody that is in some, a similar sort of offense. The only other one I could think of is probably maybe a Ty Johnson, because he worked with Mike LaFleur. But I mean, that's really it. And so there's not a ton of guys out there that would be ready to play right away, week 7, this weekend, on short notice. But Darrell Henderson makes a lot of sense, and Myles Gaskin does as well. And I wouldn't be surprised, for you fantasy football fans out there, I wouldn't be surprised if Darrell Henderson gets the majority of the workload. That's not to say he's going to get thrown right into the fire and run 20 times, but Sean McVay trusts him. And if we ever wondered if he trusts him or not, he wouldn't be on the team currently right now. So that's out the window. Sean McVay trusts Kyren. It's why all of a sudden Kyren was running 20 times in a game. Sean McVay trusts Darrell Henderson, has a lot of experience with him, used him in the Super Bowl. Big reason why they were able to win that game. He can help you in the receiving game, pass protection, in the run game. And I'm excited for it, Alexis. I really am. It sucks not to see Kyren, but it's a little bit of a consolation prize to be able to see, guys like Darrell Henderson back and of course, Myles Gaskin, who I think Myles Gaskin in his role as a scat back, I'd like to see them both on the field at the same time and mix it up. But I think Gaskin could have a decent game in the passing attack as well.
Yeah, definitely an interesting mix there that I'm excited to see what the Rams do with it. Obviously, very sad that Kyren and Ronnie are injured. Ronnie's going to be out for a while. Kyren, I'm not sure. I think he's at least going to be out this week and probably the next week is my assumption. I don't think they're going to try to force him back because they want to keep him healthy towards the end of the season. Maybe if they potentially want to make a playoff run. I think he is obviously running back 1, but I think running back 2 at this point, very much up for grabs. I think that all of these guys, Ronnie Rivers, Henderson, Gaskin, Freeman, I really think that it's basically a competition right now to be that running back 2. I think it's very wide open. I don't think there's any quote unquote right answer. I think it's just going to be who outperforms who fits better with the scheme, who does the role the best. So I definitely think that that's a competition that's going to be happening while Kyren's out. Everybody's going to be competing for that role.
Yeah, it's a old school trial by fire, if you will, because you have 4 guys and people are saying on Twitter, well, you're not going to have 4 active running backs. Why? That's not unheard of. Most teams would have 4 active running backs before the new rules came into place because you need that 4th guy to be on special teams. So it's not out of the question. I mean, who do you bring in that, so if you say you have 4 active running backs, then maybe Corey Durden doesn't suit up like he did last week. Okay, so maybe you take a defensive lineman off the field and you put him on the inactive list. Alexis, this does speak volume to me why I think the NFL needs to figure this out, fix this, whatever, because I don't see why we need healthy scratches. I don't understand it. You have 53 players and you can only suit up, 46, 47 of them. It just sounds like a high maintenance thing that doesn't actually need to be in place. And furthermore, I think, as we're seeing at this point in the season, I think it's gotten to the point where it's like, I wouldn't be against them expanding the rosters either. I mean, I understand they expanded the practice squad and that's basically extension, but Vikings aren't feeling too great about that. They just lost, Gaskin today, and he's actually been active in a couple of their regular season games this year. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts, but all in all, I think this says a lot. Actions speak louder than words. I think this says a lot that they are going to be running the ball more this week than they would have if they didn't go out and get 2 more running backs. So at the very worst, I think they probably run, we'll say 18 times in this game. At the best, they catch lightning in a bottle, like a CJ Anderson type of move. Let's not forget, came off his couch and had, crazy performances left and right. If that's the case with Henderson, just look at what the future holds with Henderson and Kyren being able to be the number 1 guy. And now you take him out and you don't have to worry about any sort of deficiency in pass protection because Henderson is that good as well. And so I think that's the beauty of this. And this is why I've been saying for a while he makes a lot of sense more than Cam does, because now there's no tell, Alexis. You're not letting the defense know when Kyren comes out and Ronnie comes in. Are you expecting Ronnie to win in pass pro? Probably not, right? So that's the thing, is that Zach Evans isn't a great pass protector. Royce Freeman is solid, but he's not a great runner, right? So it's like, you take what you can get. And Gaskin is okay in pass protection, but really the 2 best pass protectors without a doubt on this roster at the running back spot, Kyren and Hendo. And I think it works out well long-term, down the rest of the season. This is more than just a short-term signing. I think Henderson has a golden opportunity. And I think the way people talk about him, Alex, people act like he's 30. He's 26 years old. He's still young, and he's been in the gym every single day. I've seen on Instagram, the guy's been working hard. And by the way, he was going to potentially get signed by the Packers. He turned down that workout. He actually canceled it and went and signed with the Rams. So the more you know there. But yeah, I thought, in this game, the receiving room, it's got to be better, in my opinion. There were 2 drop touchdowns, Higbee and Puka Nacua. And it's okay. You can love Puka Nacua and also admit that that was the worst performance of his career. But Cooper Kupp is the best receiver in football actively. With Justin Jefferson on IR right now, there's not anyone better than Cooper Kupp on a down in, down out basis. You can say what you will about Tyreek Hill. He is the most explosive. He's probably the most dominant offensive. I wouldn't even say dominant. He is the most explosive offensive weapon in football. But the thing about Tyreek Hill is he will have those games where he has 4 catches for 50 yards if he doesn't have that big explosive play. Cooper Kupp is always going to win at the short and intermediate, and he can win at the deep level, as we saw in this game. And that's what makes Cooper Kupp so dangerous. The only thing stopping him is health. That's it. Another game. His second game, Alexis, after missing almost an entire year since the last time he played football, and he's gone for over 100 yards. And I feel like we've kind of taken that for granted because that is the statement, and that's the bar he set. It is that high where we just take 100 yards for granted with Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I was just about to bring up this offense, looking at our offensive performance in this game. Like I mentioned earlier, 2 halves, right? 2 halves, 2 games. I'm not going to talk about how we need to stop doing that because everybody knows, we need to be playing more complete games. But if you look at these guys on offense, to me, the star of the game was Kyren Williams in the second half. That was if I had to give somebody the game ball, which he did get one of the game balls, it would have been Kyren Williams. I mean, 158 yards on the ground, 7.9 averaging yards. That's insane. I mean, very, very successful in the run. against Arizona for him, 20 carries, a touchdown. In the receiving, like you mentioned, Cooper Kupp, 148 yards, a touchdown, 7 receptions, obviously the star there in the receiving game. Didn't really see that much. Tutu Atwell had 1 reception for 30 yards.
On one target. He was
On one
targeted
target.
once.
Puka Nacua, 4 receptions, 26 yards. Like you mentioned earlier, not the best game from Nacua. But I mean, I can't even complain. Look at the amazing season he's had. It was bound to happen at some point. And, you know, I do think it's Cooper Kupp is obviously going to be stealing shares from Atwell and Nacua, right? I mean, he's Cooper Kupp. We knew that when he came back, he was going to become wide receiver 1 again and get a majority of the targets, and that's been the case. Offensively, it's hard. You know, I felt like the game plan in the first half was very poor. And I would like to know, I don't really think we should sit here and have the same conversation that we have all the time about why do we come out and do this and 2 different game plans in each half and just never like run the ball. I do think that after the way that we ran the ball this game, I'm hoping that going forward, we start running the ball. I don't know if, I mean, it won't be Kyren running the ball. So I don't know if that's going to change or not, but like you meant, like we're playing, and we'll talk about this later in our next episode, not this one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, which I was really excited to see Kyren run against. But now he's going to be out. But could you imagine?
Yes, I could.
I mean, it
200
would
yards.
have been, it would have been just a nightmare for Pittsburgh. But I think that we are going to run the ball. But Jake, what do you think it was that? Do you think McVay just had a wake-up call in the locker room at halftime? Do you think, because it couldn't have always been the plan, right? He couldn't have always been like, we're not going to run it in the first half, and then no matter what happens when we come out the second half, I'm going to start running the ball. Do you think it finally was a wake-up moment, or do you think it was just because the passing game wasn't working out?
You know what I think it was, Alexis? I think we're making enough waves where someone showed him at halftime in the locker room. They showed him the Twitter feed. They saw Jake Ellenbogen, Alexis Kraft, anyone else was like, yeah, we gotta start running the ball. No, all jokes aside, I think that it has affected Sean to the point where we saw it in the Colts game as well. Just running the football right after the Bengals game, and then getting away from that a little bit when you go up against a tougher team with a very slim margin for error, and you're thinking the best way to win is, you know, your Hall of Fame quarterback Matthew Stafford, and obviously Cooper Kupp, right? And unfortunately, it's easy to get away from what is working because you have that Hall of Fame quarterback, and I think a lot of it stems from Sean, you know, doing a lot with Jared Goff and having a kind of almost the training wheels approach where he was constantly talking in his head and everything. I'm not even saying Goff needed it, but Sean apparently did. And I think a lot of that still kind of, you know, it's still there with Sean McVay, in that, not that Stafford needs that, but it's more like, man, I was in this position and now I have Matthew Stafford. And it's like he wants to throw it so much because he's like, I don't want to waste a second with Matthew Stafford. But at the same time, it's like you have to run the ball. And the reason for that, it's not just a casual take. I see so many people say that, oh, that's just a casual take, like run the ball. What does that even mean? No, it's how you mitigate a pass rush. So it's how you give, you know, your left tackle and your right tackle a little bit of a play off, if you will. Because if you're just going to have him on an island, say you throw 40 times, that's 40 times where now your entire offensive line has to go to work in pass protection. So instead of the run game where you're going forward, you're attacking as an offensive line. The pass game, you're basically on the back pedal. You're on the kick slide. You're going backward. And doing that consistently and getting pushed and pulled and prodded and whatever, it's not easy to do on a down in, down out basis. That's the problem with throwing all the time. So you got to be able to run the ball. And I think eventually, Sean McVay, it's going to click. I thought it did in the Colts game. I think the Eagles game, it woke them up a little bit. That like, okay, hey, like we can't just stick to one thing. The Eagles are really good. We need to throw the ball. And I think the Eagles defense had a lot to do with that. Even though you and I said, I thought Kyren ran pretty well against that nasty Eagles front. But the hope is, against the Steelers, against Dallas, against, these teams with really good pass rush. I mean, even, the Packers, they got Rashawn Gary, who's killing it, Preston Smith. Against a good pass rush, it doesn't matter if they're good against the run. You're hoping they're at least going to keep them honest with the run and keep those guys, off the backs of the pass protectors at the left and right tackle spot, Havenstein and Alec Jackson. But that's the hope. And I think with this upcoming Steelers game, that's what you're going to need to do. But also this Cardinals pass rush, like it's not the best, but it's not the worst either. Like we saw it, like we talked about it. I forget his name, Demarcagi or whatever his name was. Totally blanking out of Duke. Totally blanking on his name. Victor Dimukeji. That was his name.
Yes.
So Dimukeji and Dennis Gardeck, they held to 2 pressures a pop. But Dimukeji got a sack. Kaiser White got a sack on a blitz, and then Kevin Strong got the other sack, the defensive tackle. So I thought the offensive line was good, but I think the offensive line was good and, was able to manage it a little bit because they ran the ball so much in the second half and they weren't like overworked in pass protection, if that makes any sort of sense.
It does. And I'm very curious and anxious to see how this plays out going forward. Like I said, we'll talk about the Steelers game next episode, but run defense, very poor. So big opportunity for us in the run game there. But yeah, offensively, I mean, second half, really no complaints. I thought that it was executed perfectly. I understand a lot of people on Twitter are like, oh, it's just the Cardinals. Well, any given Sunday in the NFL, you saw the last 2 undefeated teams in the NFL lose on Sunday. You saw the 49ers lose and you saw the Eagles lose. So really, in the NFL, anything can happen. So I think that we should give the Rams a little bit more credit for pulling that off against the Arizona Cardinals defense. I mean, they just looked unstoppable, I thought, in the second half, especially in the run game. Jake, defensively, not a ton of complaints across the board defensively. I mean, you held the Cardinals to 9 points, which holding an NFL team to 0 touchdowns is obviously an impressive feat. I know that there was some people, the tackling, again, still not great. Hopefully the Rams can improve on that. But overall, I thought they did their job, looked really good. Byron Young had a really good game. I was looking at the stats for this game because they did adjust the stats. So Aaron Donald did not get a sack this game officially, guys.
That is insanity. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
How is a read option? Like, because here's the thing. I understand he chose to run it, but a quarterback tackle 6 yards behind the line of scrimmage to me is a sack.
Yeah.
It should.
No, I agree. I thought I don't see. I mean, I guess I kind of understand why they didn't count it as a sack, but I think it should be. The only, the sacks this game, you got Byron Young with 1 and Jonah Williams with 1. Still very impressive. Roseboom with an interception. So those 3 guys stood out, as well as Aaron Donald. But I think that what doesn't get talked about enough with Aaron Donald, right, is he's opening up opportunities for these guys because he's still playing at such a dominant level. That's something that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. But if you're watching the game, you see what a problem he is, and then you allow guys like a Byron Young or Jonah Williams to get the sack. And again, I think Aaron Donald should have had one, especially division rival. I mean, come on, it's fun to let Aaron Donald, or not let him, but he earned it, get a sack. Yeah. So that was surprising.
I'm not a fan of that.
I'm not either. I heard that. Me. I heard someone say that on Twitter, and then I went today and checked the what the box score ended up being, and I was like, that's just unreal. Because I thought he played a really good game, and I thought his sack was deserving. But yeah, I mean, Ernest Jones led the team in tackles, 7 tackles.
Aaron
Jordan
Donald had
Fuller,
7 pressures.
yeah. I
Byron
mean,
Young,
it's
Byron
hard to
Young and Hoyt
complain.
had 5. So even Hoyt got in the mix.
Yeah, it's hard to complain about how the Rams defense played. Again, the only complaint I think we could have for this game was the tackling. Just there was a couple plays where you just let him go. A lot of plays where I also felt like they let Josh Dobbs, on what was it, 3rd and what, where he got a 24-yard
Oh
run, and
my
just
God.
it's
Yeah.
just
3rd
things
and
like that.
13 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's hard to say, is this just inexperience by a lot of these guys? Is it just truly they're just bad at tackling? I mean, I think it could be a mix of a lot of things, but regardless of what the issue is, they got to fix this going forward if they want a chance at being a wild card team, making the playoffs. I mean, you have to tackle. You can't have this happening, and it's not like it's happening just a couple times through week 6. I mean, it's happening a few times a game.
Yeah.
That's concerning to me, and I know that Raheem Morris can't be happy with that as well. But again, overall, I thought the defense played a very good game. 9 points. That's all
Raheem's cooking right now, though, because what I have to say is you can't have it both ways. Before the season started, you can't say this team is going to be 32nd in the league in defense. And then now what they've been able to do, being at least middle of the pack in run defense and top 10 in pass. You can't come out and say, yeah, but this and that. No. You said they were going to be the worst defense in football, and Raheem Morris has basically stretched the talent as far as he can. And it's not just because of Aaron Donald, because we saw what he was doing last year without Aaron Donald. So Raheem Morris is showing that he's in fact very good. He's a top 3 defensive coordinator in football. And furthermore, he's been able to develop guys like a Byron Young. He's been able to develop guys like an O'Shawn Mathis. And, I think that's the thing that I'm really excited about, but also Kobe Turner. Kobe Turner has looked really good. He's a top 10 run defender right now. I actually have some numbers that I can throw out here. So Kobe Turner, 1st in tackles among all rookie defensive tackles. Tied for 2nd in sacks among all rookie interior defensive linemen, 3rd in run stop rate among all interior defensive linemen. So he's 3rd, actually, not top 10. He's literally 3rd. 3rd in pressures among rookie interior defensive linemen, and he's 14th in PFF graded among all interior defensive linemen. Alexis, I know we say it a lot. It's just getting to be ridiculous at this point, but they absolutely freaking nailed this draft. I mean, just to have this many guys playing at this level this early on in the season, just imagine how much better Kobe Turner is going to be by the end of the season. Same thing with Byron Young. Same thing. We were talking about it in the last one. O'Shawn Mathis, another 2 pressures. So he's got 4 on the season. He, to me right now, is a more raw pass rusher, than Byron Young. Byron Young is a more of an edge defender. I think we're starting to see him get better in the run game. But I think with O'Shawn, he's not really being utilized a ton in the running game. Only had 1 run defensive snap, 17 pass rush snaps, and had 2 pressures. I think this is somebody who has this raw athleticism, who didn't get any playing time in OTAs, obviously didn't get any reps there, didn't get any reps in training camp, and didn't have any preseason reps. And what we've seen is for him to come out against arguably the best offensive line in football and be like, all right, welcome to the NFL. You're going up against Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. And then to come out and do what he did in that first game, showing up in those 10 reps, I thought was impressive. And then to see just that consistency now, you're starting to see it, somewhat come together. I think he's a work in progress, but the fact that he's already he's up to 18 snaps in his 2nd ever NFL game without any sort of preseason and training camp experience, it says a lot to the quality of how this guy, attacked his rehab. He didn't just sit on IR and do nothing. You could tell he clearly attacked his rehab, but also his coachability. You have to assume he had a really bad year at Nebraska, was really good at TCU. It wasn't a fit at Nebraska. And they said, there were draft experts saying this guy's 2 years away from being 2 years away. But if that's the case, then why is he already getting 18 snaps in his second ever game in the NFL? It's really impressive. It's somebody I'm following, number 32. I think he's just going to continue to get better and better. And I think the great thing about him is by having him, you're not sold, you're not stuck on just one guy. Like, you don't have to commit to him as a 6th rounder to be your starting edge defender alongside of Byron Young. He is a situational pass rusher. That's good. That's not a bad thing. He's a 6th rounder who you can bring in on passing downs, and you know that he can get to the quarterback. He's got that athleticism, and he's going to get better. So now you think long-term, Byron Young's your guy there. Michael Hoyt is, good as he is as just a football player, he's not a fit at outside linebacker. So you talk about down the road, you got $60 million cap next year, Alexis, whether they decide to pull a trade, pull the trigger on a trade this year at the deadline, which is in, 14 days or not. Regardless, they're going to have cap to go out and get somebody. And I think that's the cool thing is if you're able to get somebody with Byron Young, you still have an O'Shawn Mathis that can come off the bench and, still get home on the quarterback. So I'm excited about him. He's somebody to look out for. And I want to point out something that Blaine actually brought up, and I started to notice on film. Raheem is using these outside linebackers in coverage more. And the reason for that is because he's disguising the coverages with this. So what he's doing is he's dropping a Byron Young in coverage, or he's dropping a Michael Hoyt in coverage, and that allows him to then blitz Ernest Jones, to then blitz a Christian Roseboom. And so that's some interesting stuff there because Ernest Jones has been getting home, and he's one of the better blitzing linebackers, I think, in the league. So I mean, hey, there's a method to the madness. I don't love seeing Michael Hoyt out there, just a fish out of water, but I'm starting to see the vision, if you will.
It's definitely something to look out for and something to follow, going forward. And as much as we have these kind of little things that we criticize, as I said earlier, I mean, the defense is doing its job. I mean, again, you look at this season, it's not really pretty. It's not necessarily the most fun defense to watch. It is very anxiety inducing, but they're getting the job done. And I think that it really helps, obviously, when the offense gets the job done as well. And we saw that in the second half. That is how you play a complete game, and what this Rams team needs to do in order to succeed, in my opinion. We're not the most stacked roster, right, in the history of the NFL. It's not an offense or a defense that can afford to put all the weight, all the pressure onto themselves. So you have to kind of work together in that sense, I think. And I think that that's what we saw them do in the second half and what they need to do going forward. And we'll talk about that next episode, what that looks like more with the Steelers team. But overall, guys, this game against the Cardinals, I think in the end, everything worked out. I really liked what I saw in the second half. I really liked how aggressive they were running the ball. And yeah, I think the defense did a good job.
The secondary was great. I thought they stepped up when they had to. Credit to Kella Witherspoon. Once again, he's just looked unbelievable. In my opinion, if he's not the best corner, he's 2 or 3 in the league right now. He's just playing at an unreal level. There were some busted coverages with the safeties. And I don't think people realize what Akella Witherspoon was able to do because he's 6'4", and he's got incredible athleticism and length, and he's smart. He made a great tackle that probably saved a touchdown earlier in the game. And that pass breakup that we saw deep down the field, that everyone was talking about to Marquise Brown. It's funny because, first off, this guy can play in the trail technique because he is so fast. He's got great recovery speed. But even to say, if he wasn't purposely playing in the trail and just got blown off the ball and was completely, torched, his recovery speed allows him to recover and make that play. And that was not what happened. What happened was essentially there was a busting coverage with the safety, And so he had to go over there thinking he had safety help. He did not. He was supposed to. He goes over there. He makes the play. I mean, 7 targets, 1 reception given up. The guy has just been unbelievable. He's, among the league leaders in every single category at, cornerback. So, I think end of the day, right now, Ahkello Witherspoon, lockdown corner. You feel good about number 44. But we have to talk about number 1 for a second here. Derion Kendrick was arrested, unfortunately. Gun possession. I've given my thoughts on YouTube about that already. I still think we don't have the full details. I'm just glad it's not, alcohol induced or anything like that. And he didn't, he wasn't about to use the gun on anybody from how it sounds, but it's still not good. And unfortunately, the way it looks is that, well, the NFL, with their conduct policy, he's going to be at least suspended this week. If all else, if everything goes according to the plan of the NFL. There's obviously an investigation that has to take place. But Alexis, if that does happen, and he is unfortunately suspended, even after only giving up 26 yards for a 1 catch for 26 yards last week on 2 targets. I thought he played really well. The fan base seems to be really after him. And the guys that have been really breathing down his neck, Duke Shelley and Trey Tomlinson, this is kind of what it's all about. Next man up. You can lose your starting job like that if you have guys that are that close to you and then you make a mistake. So whether there was a mistake made or not, Derion Kendrick's likely not going to play this Sunday. That gives an opportunity for a guy like Duke Shelley. That gives an opportunity for a guy like Trey Tomlinson. Or if the Rams want to even do, the opportunity to throw Kobe Durant out on the outside and just say, you know what, this isn't working. You're not yourself this year. We're going to put you on the outside. They have that opportunity. And then it just takes that one really good game, and then it's hard to let go of that starting job. So I feel for Durant, and I'm praying for him, and I hope everything goes well there, because I'm not going to root against these people. They're humans. But the football side of me, and it would be a disservice not to bring up the football aspect on a football podcast. Duke Shelley has a golden opportunity to go from a late pickup right before the season to becoming a starter the rest of the year. And I think he's already shown you huge breakup against the Eagles, week 5 on Devontae Smith. But I mean, we've talked about, I would not be against Duke Shelley in coverage opposite Ahkello Witherspoon. And I think a big reason why so many fans are against Derion Kendrick is really because of the penalties. I think if he cut down the penalties, it wouldn't be a big deal. But now you talk about it, it's been just about every single game with the penalties. And now Derion Kendrick potentially getting suspended. Do those penalties go away? Because the way Duke Shelley's been playing when he's been in there, Ahkello, those penalties go away. And now, maybe you have more of a smaller margin for error. Maybe that goes away. It becomes a little bit bigger than in the past. So just something to look out for, Alexis. I don't know who you think is going to start or anything. I like Trey, but I think they got to go with Duke Shelley this week. I think he makes the most sense to start on the outside. You give Kobe a run inside at the star, but if he can't do it, let's see if Trey could do, he could play the star role.
Yeah, I think Duke Shelley is probably the move this week, but I would like to see some Durant. Give him some opportunities. Tomlinson, I'd like to see if they can get those guys opportunities. And Rams fans who have been wanting Kendrick out, here's your chance. He's definitely probably not going to be playing Sunday. So let's see what these other guys can do. I think they have a good opportunity as well to be successful against the Steelers offense, which we'll talk about obviously. But I think that this might be a good game for these young guys to get some reps in, get some experience in, and we can see what we're working with. But I do think Duke Shelley is probably going to take that role from Kendrick based on just his experience and his style of play. But last to talk about, Jake, is a new free agent at safety, that you and I are both interested in. I think it just would be fun for us to mention that the Atlanta Falcons have released Jaylen Hawkins. It's a safety that Jake and I interviewed on this show, who we both think would be a good fit in this Rams secondary, just because there have been some, as you mentioned earlier, lapses in coverage and some things that need to be fixed. So, Jake, what are your thoughts on Jaylen Hawkins? And do you think that there really is kind of a potential for the Rams to pick him up here?
Yeah, I think there's a chance here, Alexis. I'm not going to say it's 100%, but 6'1", 208. This guy offers obviously hard hitting ability, but I think also what he can do. 4 interceptions in his career, 9 pass breakups. He has a touchdown as well, 4 fumble recoveries and a forced fumble and a half sack with 121 tackles. His first year was Raheem Morris's last year with the Falcons. He was the defensive coordinator that year. So, there is some familiarity there. It's very fascinating. He was drafted in the 4th round the year Raheem Morris was there out of California. He's from California, went to high school in California, Buena Park. So, I wouldn't rule it out. Another guy I would also say is Myles Sanders. That would be a claim probably, I would imagine. Although now that I think about it, Hawkins would probably also be a claim. So
Yeah.
I would be for claiming both of them. Any way that you can make your team better in the short term without having to spend an arm and a leg. 4th rounder, 26 years old, and Jaylen Hawkins, not going to, be crazy there. But then also we talk about edge presence and how they need to, bolster that edge, room. I think Myles Sanders is just a no-brainer. And the last time I said there was a no-brainer, the Rams went out and did it with Darrell Henderson. I'll have a full video on it. Probably when people are seeing this, it'll probably be up after. But Myles Sanders to me makes way too much sense. This is somebody that's a really good athlete. 3rd round pick in 2022, Alexis. I mean, we're getting to the point where this is why the Rams have been able to do this F them picks for so long, because teams fail. Teams make mistakes, and the Rams take advantage all the time. We see it all the time. It's not to say that teams haven't taken advantage of the Rams' mistakes either, but we see it all the time that, the Rams stupidly got rid of John Franklin Myers. Well, we've also seen that, like, the Ravens, they had this gem in Darius Williams, out of, UAB, and he plays really well in preseason. They love him, but Jimmy Smith is coming back from the suspended list or whatever, and so they have to make a room for him. So instead of just sticking by him, they decide we'll sneak him on the practice squad. He's never seen again because the Rams snatch him and he goes on their roster and he goes and he wins the Super Bowl, and now he's in Jacksonville killing it. What we oftentimes see is that these teams now with these these new regimes get really impatient and they want their guys. That's why I got to give a lot of credit to Sean McVay for sticking by Tyler Higbee, who was drafted before he got there. You don't often see that, right? Obviously, Aaron Donald, I'm not going to give him credit for. Aaron Donald would stick on anybody's team, but Tyler Higbee, some teams might be like, he's not my guy. We're already seeing that with Arizona, Alexis. We're already seeing that. They moved on from Isaiah Simmons, not their guy. Doesn't matter. He's a 1st rounder. They sent him to the Giants for a 7th. Now we're seeing that with Myles Sanders. We saw it with Jordan. I forget the tackle's name out of, I want to say Houston, Jordan Jones, maybe.
Yeah.
Jordan Jones. This is a perfect opportunity for your team to get better because another team doesn't know how to run their team. It's that simple. To get rid of a guy who's a 3rd round pick in 2022 because he wasn't drafted by your regime is stupid. And the Rams can take advantage of that, but they have to put in a claim. And it's not going to be as easy because, if this was earlier in the season, they would have had higher priority. But now it's based on like what they are right now in the standings. It's not where they were before the season. So they wouldn't have that 6th spot. They would be right in the middle of the pack. So we'll see what happens. But I like them both, Alexis. I'm not one of those people that's just constantly like, ooh, there's a new player that became available. Ram. But I think these are 2 guys that can help the team out a little bit. And it's not to say Jaylen Hawkins even starts for this team this year, but just to add, some depth here, a guy that I think is a good football player. I'm sure, you do as well. And then Myles Sanders, I mean, getting a 3rd round pick from 2022. You just throw him on your roster, you claim him, and now you have him until what, 2026? To me, that is as no brainer as it gets.
Yeah, I tweeted out earlier today that the Rams need to go after Sanders. I just think it's like almost like a gift.
It is.
So we'll see. But like you also mentioned, we're not as high on the priority list for waiver claims. So I do think a lot of people probably will put in a claim for him. I hope that the Rams do, and I hope that the Rams are the one that gets him, but we'll see. I think that would just really, like we kind of mentioned, before, the Rams have kind of a deficiency at that edge linebacker position. So why not put Sanders in there? Why not give him a chance? He's still very young. I mean, drafted in 2022, very, very 6'5", young.
248. Like, he's got good size, good athleticism out of Cincinnati. He's 25 years old. Like, I don't know. I don't think it's much of a thinking thing. I think they should just do it, but we'll see.
We'll see. Maybe by the time we record our next episode, he'll be a Ram, and we will get to talk about that when we preview the Steelers. But guys, I think that's going to do it for our episode covering the Rams win over the Arizona Cardinals. Always really happy to get a division win against an NFC West rival. As always, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe. You can follow us on social media at Downtown Rams. You can follow me on Twitter at the Alexis Kraft. You can follow Jake at JK Bogan. And guys, until next time, stay safe, take care, and go Rams.